All right, gang, let's get rolling with Mr. Sam Newell. Hopefully you took some time to share your gratitude. Special shout out to Brandon Earl, one of our coaching strategists, and it's his birthday today. So happy birthday, Brandon. I know you're on the call. And hey, I'm thrilled to be able to spend some time with Sam, and I've loved watching his journey and his success and the things that he's doing. So let's get Mr. Sam Newell mic'd up, man. How are you doing today?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. So good to be with you. Hey, so tell us just a little bit about yourself. I know you spent a lot of time in the commercial space, but give us just a little your own personal bio, right? I mean, what are you
Okay.
doing in the real estate business? And then, of course, I'll ask you a few other questions in regards to your family and all that good stuff. So just speak to us just a little bit so people know where you're spending your time on the commercial side.
Yeah, so the reason I got into real estate originally was because I was starting to flip homes. So I got my license after I bought my first flip. So I've always been extremely excited about real estate investments and the vehicle of investing in real estate, whether it's flips or multifamily or commercial. And that's what I do now. So now I focus on buying large multifamily assets across the country with my partners. I have a number of wealthy partners who look to me to find these large multifamily properties, and we buy them together, and then we give returns to the passive investors that invest with us. So I sell a few homes a year right now, a few commercial properties a year right now in Utah, and most of my time is spent analyzing deals in Texas or Kansas City or Tulsa, all over the place. You know, Utah and Boise as well. I'm licensed in Boise. Still love taking care of my clients on the residential side, and I just don't have a ton of time for that anymore. But been doing that for 10 years, and it's a lot of fun.
All right, so you're going to perfect. That's fantastic. So okay, so you're 10 years in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about your family background. So married, kid, how many kids?
Yeah, we have 2 kids. We're actually up here at a family reunion. I'm working and they're hanging out, having fun with the in-laws. We're at Bear Lake. So I have a 2.5-year-old and a
Nice.
6.5-year-old. And my wife and I got married in 2008, and then we actually bought that first flip together. So she's been really fun to do this with because she really gets it. Her grandpa made millions in multifamily and real estate investing. So we've been in this together, and we've flipped. I think we've lived in 5 flips together. And last year, you know, I've been making great money, very blessed for quite a while. But last year we actually bought our first home for ourselves. So we've never actually lived in a house that wasn't an investment until this last year.
Good for you. I love that. Well, I know recently, just in the last little few weeks, I guess month, time's flying. So just you closed on some, talk about just the transaction that you just closed upon. I mean, you closed a big one that I know is pretty darn excited. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, obviously you've done sales, you're doing the multifamily, you're looking always look for investors. But I mean, like, it's not just something you're speaking to. I mean, you're earning in commissions, I know $1 million plus a year. And of course, then you have all the investment side of that. And so there's some really cool things that are happening for you, which are so exciting. So just talk about a couple of these transactions that you've recently done, or the ones that you'd love to choose. And you and I haven't choreographed any of this. So I love the fact that, you know, I just want you to speak from the heart, what you've learned, what you've taken away, and how people can be inspired to maybe even move people your direction, or if there's multifamilies that and other types of commercial business that you'd love to help them with. I know that. So, and that doesn't matter whether it's Utah or California, because you're doing everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got
so talk about a couple of the transactions you're doing.
Okay.
So talk about a couple of transactions that you're doing.
So first of all, our main goal is to have double-digit returns with extremely low risk. And it's not easy to do, but it's not difficult either. So you have a lot of these people that think real estate is an inherently high-risk investment because people lost their shorts in 2008, right? So our main goal is through education and through being the most experts in our field, we can find these different properties and investments and have extremely low risk. So that's what we focus on, is extremely low risk, high returns. We do Usually it's non-recourse loans where, they don't come after a personal credit. It's based on the income of the property. So this hotel I bought in December was supposed to be a 10-year hold. It was extremely run down. I actually, because it felt a little bit higher risk, I didn't let any of our investors or our partners invest with me. It was just me and my good friend Lyndon, who's my main partner. And so we had some people a little bit frustrated with us that we didn't let them in that deal, but it was high risk. It was a beat up hotel. We paid cash for it. It had prostitutes and cartel drugs in it. It was bad. It was the worst of the worst. So we spent 2 months getting rid of the illegal activity, and then Corona hit. And so what I've been preaching for, the past few years is you have to be recession proof. Anything that you buy, you really have to be recession proof. And if you are, you're going to be fine. And so our hotel spoke to that very, very well, because our occupancy dropped to just under 10%. And any investment property, if you're under 10% occupied, you're bleeding money. And so we did in March a little bit, but we had the funds set aside. We were fine. We could sleep at night. We were okay. And we ended up contracting with the state to take care of quarantine people. So anybody who needed to be quarantined, mandated by the state, we actually took them into our hotel, provided them breakfast, lunch, and dinner, helped the nurses come and visit them, check on them. And we actually made more money than we ever had the last 2 months because of that, because we were able to have good relationships with the city and the state. They knew who we were. They knew that we were cleaning up the hotel, and they loved us for that. And so they gave us that contract and really saved the day. And we actually just sold the hotel 7 months later, tripled our money. Everything we paid for it, everything we put into it, we tripled our money, and got our money back out. Now we're buying other deals. So that was not a normal investment for us by any means. I probably will never buy another hotel. They're extremely management intensive. So if it was a 96-room hotel, if you buy a 96-door apartment complex, you can spend 5 to 10 hours a week working on it. The hotel was me and my partner and my assistant, 20 hours each. It was a lot of work. And it was a heavy lift, but it was really, really fun.
Cool. And what state was that in?
That was in New Mexico. My business partner lives in New Mexico.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, speak to some of the multifamily that you've done, a few of the different transactions that you've done, because I know that there's a lot of, almost want to say excitement and, a lot of almost sex appeal with these multifamilies, especially even right now with everybody wanting to get involved in them. So share with us just a little bit of, in relationship to the multifamily, which is certainly, I think, is going to be right down a little more of the mainstream. And multifamily, of course, could be from, 200 plus units to a fourplex. I mean, or
Right.
duplex at some level, right? But I know that most of what your focal points right today are on the larger stuff. So speak to some of those other transactions that you've done.
Yeah, yesterday we actually closed on a deal in Atlanta, 126 doors. And our limited investors are the people that give us money but don't have to actually do anything on these deals. That's why they're called a limited investor, limited partner. We'll be giving them about an 8% cash on cash return. We'll be renovating the units. It's in a great location in Atlanta. And overall, we'll be getting about a 15 to 16% return year over year. So we're really excited for that one. And all of our deals typically look the same. These big deals are almost always identical, no matter what city they're in, what state they're in. They're going to be a little bit run down or outdated. They're a seller that's owned it for 6, 7, 8, 10, maybe 20 years that just hasn't put money into it, hasn't updated it in the last few years, and the rents are a little bit low. So we'll come in, we'll put lipstick on it and make it look really, really good. The tenants are usually very, very happy, and then we are able to achieve great rent bumps and great returns. So next Tuesday, we're closing on 282 doors in Cincinnati. And that one's a really, really fun one. Same thing, we're 8 to 10% cash on cash return for our investors, 15 to 16% total return year over year. That one was $15 million, and we're really excited for that one. Let's see, we've got 30 doors in Albuquerque. All of these look very, very similar. So the things that we look for, we're offering in Kansas City, I believe, tomorrow. Today we're offering on one in Houston. But let's take it back to Utah. We look for high cash flow and really good locations. So I've sold a lot of fourplexes in Utah, duplexes, and I look for the same metrics. I look for a property that either needs some work and I can achieve a rent bump, or that is in an amazing location, doesn't need a lot of work, and is going to naturally have rent bumps because of the location it's in, because it's close to the Silicon Slopes or the jobs in Salt Lake. And so I think what, as these realtors, at Century 21 Everest, they get these clients. I think that's a really good differentiating factor. You can either have a good deal through an amazing location, A+ location, A+ asset, or you can have a really good asset that maybe isn't as good of a location, but you can get higher cash flow. You can renovate it. And so both are good. I'll buy in West Valley all day long. I have a lot of investors that would never touch West Valley. I love West Valley. I'll buy there all day long. You just have to be smart and educated and an expert about it. You can't go in thinking that it's going to be the same type of asset as buying in Lehigh or Cottonwood Heights. So really the name of the game for us is educating ourselves on a market, on a business plan, and making sure we do what's called a recession test on every single property we make. And unless it can cash flow at 20% vacancy or lower, so at maximum 20% vacancy, we won't buy it. We won't even look at it, because the worst of the worst in 2008, 9, 10, the recession hit, maybe 15% economic vacancy is what I'm trying to say. And
right, absolutely.
So we do a recession test, and go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you. So we got some of our people asking. So one, congratulating you. So keep up the great work. Number two, they were just asking if you're licensed in multiple states. I think you said you were licensed in Idaho. I think some of the people are probably trying to say, well, how do you do that? Well, one of the things is you're buying your own property, right?
Right. These are for me.
There's pretty much nothing that, in fairness, you're not buying anything that you're not an owner in.
Right. Absolutely.
So I mean, you have the privilege, the opportunity to go buy anything, anywhere, in any state. If you're one of the owners, and of course, then you're assembling some people and you're putting some monies together and things of that sort. So one, if people want to invest with you, they can invest with you. And if they wanted to, if you look at the fact of whether it be Utah or California, which is the majority of the people who are listening to this today, are coming from there. What advice would you have for them in regards to how to maximize any opportunity in regards to the commercial multifamily, specifically the multifamily side of it? How would you encourage them to maximize that, take advantage of that, work with, whether it be with you or doing their own thing? Give them some advice of like what they could do right now.
So the beauty about living in the year 2020 is that we have all these free resources. And if you want to educate yourself on how to be a multifamily purchaser, or just if you want to be a better sales agent who can provide better data to your sellers and buyers, there's a million podcasts out there. There's Joe Fairless's podcast, Rod Cleave's podcast, Kevin Bupp, if you want to learn about mobile home parks. We buy mobile home parks as well. We have over 300 doors or pads in mobile home parks. So I have a podcast that's called Recession Proof. You've been on it, George. So
which is a great one. So yours is called Recession Proof?
Yeah, Recession Proof Real Estate Investing. And I interview the top investors and I ask them simply, what happened in 2008? Where were you? What did you see happen? What were the mistakes you saw make? And what have you learned since then? I'm still listening to 2, 3, 4 podcasts a day because I know there's new information out there. There's new ways of looking at deals or different things changing that I want to learn. And so I would say learn and then get creative. There's a few things we do on every single apartment complex we buy. Number one is we install security cameras and lighting, and that makes the residents feel safer. But then we also have an assistant sit there and count who has dogs and who's paying us pet rent. and she'll watch the security footage. Who takes a dog out to go potty? She'll make a list. She'll figure out which units they live in. And we will usually catch about 50% of the people that have pets are not paying a pet fee. And we don't evict them. We just say, hey, if you want to live here with a pet, you got to pay. So that increases our cash flow in a huge, huge way. And we love pets. We don't have a problem with people having pets. You just can't lie on your lease. And you got to pay for it.
Love that.
So yeah, creative things like that. You know, we've worked with the city a ton. The New Mexico deal was very specific to that. I offered to pay for and install a sub police station in my hotel. So basically a break room for police officers to come and get a Monster, a Red Bull, and a donut, and have an Xbox if they want to take a break or watch a movie, do their paperwork. My brother-in-law's an officer, and you know, he would appreciate that where he lives up in Boise. And so we got denied, but what we ended up doing, because the hotel was a little rough, we ended up just buying them dinner. We said, hey, officers, we want you to come hang out at a hotel. We don't want the Mexican drug cartel here selling drugs anymore. We don't want cocaine and prostitutes at our hotel. So come hang out with us. And so we just bought them lunch and dinner, and the officers would just make a ton of rounds. And it was funny because you'd see these drug dealers pull into our hotel, and they'd look around and they say, oh shoot, you know, this isn't the place it used to be. And they'd hurry and leave really, really quick. So that's how we were able to turn that place around within 2 months. And for the last 15 years, it's been the worst drug place in that specific city. So the city loved us for that. And so get creative and think outside the box a little bit, and how to add value to your tenants and your property without spending a lot of money. That didn't cost us really anything.
So how do they prospect? Even if we're talking duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes, the 10plexes, I mean, you're talking, of course, the big stuff. What would you recommend in regards to prospecting, getting a hold of these owners, trying to help them to either buy another property, sell a property, 1031 exchange a property, even the smaller stuff? How would you encourage an agent today to begin prospecting for multifamily?
Yeah, and I still do that myself. Duplexes, fourplexes. If you find a listing in Utah, California, I'm sure it's the same. It's going to sell in days with multiple offers if you price it right. So number one is learn how to run the cap rate. That's extremely important in units that are fourplexes and smaller. Basically, 100% of the sales and the prices are based off of a cap rate. And anybody who wants to schedule a call with me, I'm more than happy to run through it. It'll take us about 5 minutes. I'll teach you how to run a cap rate, what questions to ask a seller. I'm more than happy to help people. I love sharing the knowledge. But basically, you figure out what the gross income is, subtract out about 35% of that for expenses, divide that by the going cap rate in that area, and that's going to give you a price. So you need to be able to do that on the fly. And so when I started cold calling, and you know, I'm just like a lot of these agents here, I was cold calling 3, 4, 5 hours a day for 5, 6 years. I would be able to do a cap rate and give a seller a price within seconds over the phone with my calculator. And if you can say, look, it sounds like your gross income is this, and so your price should be X, and I can sell it to you or sell it for you and get you multiple offers, that's a very powerful conversation to have. You can't call them and say, hey, you know, what do you think you'd want to get? Well, I'll run some comps. You don't run comps in multifamily. You go by cap rate. And so then you have to learn and figure out, okay, if it's West Valley, what's my average cap rate there? You can use comps to do that. And then if it's Harriman, what's my average cap rate there? And so again, I'm more than happy to help others and spend 15 minutes on a phone. But Prospect Now is a really good resource.
And what, if we can, before you hang up, one, obviously you give us your contact information, but we'll send it out also with this message today, but maybe in the chat box prior to you kicking off, let's have you type it in, which would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put in my Calendly link so you can schedule a 15-minute appointment with me there. And that'll be really easy. Nice. But yeah, Prospect Now is a resource that you pay for. You can download multi-unit owners. There's a few different ones out there, but Prospect Now I feel is one of the best. And yeah, I think in 2018, that was my biggest year. Sold 106 properties, and I think 90 of those were multifamily. And it was, fourplexes, duplexes, triplexes. And the last thing I would say is look for a niche. So everyone wants to sell duplexes and fourplexes right now. Find a neighborhood that isn't priced too crazy high, that's single family, but that could rent really well. And I have a couple of those in my bag of tricks, that when an investor can't find a fourplex or a duplex he likes, I say, well, this single family neighborhood rents really, really well, and their average price is 300. So it's still a great cap rate, a great deal. So don't just go by what the market's willing to give you. Be a little creative on that side as well, and try and find a good deal for your investors, not just looking on the MLS, but trying to find a good location, and that's what I've done, and it's worked out really well.
Great. So let's switch gears just a little bit. So, I mean, look, you're doing some big stuff, right? I mean, you didn't start off doing big stuff. That wasn't the very first thing you did. I know. I mean, that's just, that's the nature of the beast. Yeah. So how did you shift your mindset, and how do you protect your mindset now, working on such big transactions? I mean, I'm saying $1 million plus now, but I mean, I know you well enough. I know what you're working. I know the things that you're doing. Talking about multi-million-dollar type of income. How have you shifted your mindset? How have you elevated your belief system of what's possible? What are you listening to? What are you watching? How are you doing that? How are you working with your mind in regards to the virus and everything that's come at us over these last several months?
Yeah. I mean, mindset is everything. And speaking of the virus, we dropped over $40 million in assets that were under contract because of the shutdown. And that was a gut punch. That's not fun to do. It's not fun to happen, but I knew that it would come back. And so I've tried to stay very strong, my mindset that way. So there's a lot of people that are just depressed sitting at home, but I grew up very poor. And when I got in this business, and you'll laugh at this, I just said, someday, if I could just make 100,000 a year, that would be it. That would be amazing. And a lot of people get in this business with that same idea, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I laugh at it because I made that per month in 2018, and I'm buying crazy huge assets that I never thought were possible. So I would say hanging out with the right type of people, and that's why I'm at Century 21 Everest, is to hang out with you and Lindsay and the other top producers here, and really hear how they think and be influenced them. That's one of the reasons I started my podcast, is I actually interview some of the top agents across the country, and some of them, believe it or not, have had their biggest months ever in April and May. And it's because they're working harder where everyone else isn't. So, I've read all the books. The Zig Ziglars have been very, very important to me. Mike Ferry and the people you and I know from there, but hanging out with top producers consistently, and consciously working on, just like we did this morning, increasing my self-confidence, and setting big goals. And so in 2013, I wrote on the top of my Mike Ferry notebook, and people should do this when they go to your trainings as well, but I wrote, make $1 million a year by 2018. And I wrote it at the top of every single page, on every training notebook, on every event I went to for 5 years. And in 2018, I accomplished that goal. And so what you think about absolutely can happen. So now my goal is to get to $1 billion in assets managed by 2029. And that sounds like a big number. And 3, 4, 5 years ago, that probably would have sounded much bigger to me. But guess what? I have a good friend whose office is a couple miles from ours in Salt Lake, who has 1.8 billion under management. He's a syndicator like me. He buys multifamily like me, and he's done it in 11 years. And, Grant Cardone did it in 4 years. And so when you start hanging out with these people, I have multiple friends in my mastermind that are at, not quite $1 billion, but they're getting up there, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 doors under management in 4 or 5 years. And so it's very, very possible. And I would say, change the people you hang out with, and hang out with George and the people at Everest and the big producers. I love it. And that will absolutely do it. Yeah.
Well, to your point, right? You, all of a sudden, when you've made those decisions, like writing on the top of your notepad and your workbooks and whatnot of where you're going, it speaks to the fact of when we first started today is, I think I find it interesting that, there's 30 people on the call, when we're doing affirmations and journal writing, as if like they've got that all dialed in and figured out, and they're only waiting for the interview so they can gather information, which is great, but they're not taking the time to influence their thinking, and they're not taking the time to write in their journal. They're not taking time to express their gratitude so they can filter out all of the fear that, can reside in going big in our lives. And I think that it's people will jokingly look at me going like, wait, you really do this stuff? Like, yeah, I really do this stuff. I don't create $100 million company by accident, right? It's not an accident that the things, the 10 different companies that I own and all the volume that moves through and all the people that assemble, it wasn't an accident. It was, who did I spend my time with? What did I define my goals as? I still remember, Sam, when I said I was going to create $100 million company, and I'd sit in boardrooms and people would mock me who were even owners in the organization, say, stop even talking about that. That's ridiculous. And yet 7 years into it, we were at 100 million.
That's awesome.
And only 2-3 years before that, they were mocking it and saying, don't mention it again, slamming their hands on conference room tables. It was hilarious as I look back going, what is going on when we look at the limitations of what people think we can or cannot do is unbelievable. And we will buy into what people think we can do or what we can't do, and let that be our messaging, and don't assemble, as you're speaking to, and assembling ourselves with the right people and being around the right people, being around people who are going to, like, think of all the times, just a side note here. Think of all the times when you're with someone and I don't know if you've ever done this, where you limit what you're really doing. You won't talk as large and big about what you're really doing. But I have a group of friends where I don't have to filter how much, I don't have to filter how big my company is. I don't have to filter about the big trips that I have planned and that I've gone on. I don't have to filter what I'm driving, because they aren't sitting there condemning me, judging me. They're celebrating with me and encouraging me to go even to a higher level. And that's a whole different group of people that most people are hanging out with. And so look, in my life, there's usually only a handful of those people that you find, but you've got to get serious about finding them, to your point.
And for me, it's my family. I feel guilty talking about success around them. I can't talk about money. I can't talk about success. They start asking me for money, and they start thinking I'm this greedy rich dude that I don't know what they think. I just know it's negative. And so I don't talk about money. I don't talk about what I do with them anymore. I hang out with the friends and the people that are excited for me. Michael Young is one of my main partners. We talk every day, and we talk about having $1 billion in real estate holdings and all the good we can do for our tenants, because we're not slumlords. We don't have crappy properties. We take care of our tenants, and how that's a positive thing. And yes, our investors are going to make a ton of money, but it helps so many people, not just our investors and not just us.
Yeah, I love that. Holy cow, we are out of time. All right, brother. So give people, one, your information, but number two, any last closing thoughts in regards to just simply elevating their belief system, their skill sets, an aha, something you've learned recently. What would you encourage? Give us your last thought or two over the next minute or so.
If you want to get good at something, you have to do it a ton. When I wanted to get good at the listing presentation, I wrote it out every day, every single work day, 5 days a week for a year. And I wanted to get good at it. And now I'm very good at working with sellers and buyers. And then I wanted to get good at working with investors. So I role played and practiced every day like crazy. So if you want to get good at something, don't practice it for 15 minutes twice a week. You have to hit it hard. Like a LeBron James, like a Kobe Bryant did. They practice, like Michael Jordan. They practice harder than anyone. Don't be like the Allen Iverson and say, well, I'm not going to practice. So practice like crazy and get educated. The education's free. And that's how you become an expert. And that's how you become someone that people can trust. And that's what people need, is someone that they can trust, that gives them good information. And just like you, George, I trust you completely, and you give amazing advice, and it's because you've hung out with the right people, but you've also practiced what you preach and you work your butt off. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you. Well, and to your point, right? You it's not like 2018 just showed up and you started making $1 million+ a year these last few years. It's all the success, all the failures, right? It's kind of been there, done that. And all of a sudden your experiences turn into wisdom because of the good and the bad. To your point, you said, I don't think I'll ever buy another hotel again because of the experience. And although you got out of it and you economically, made a return on it, the reality is it's not where you're going to spend your time. So you've learned from that. And I think that sometimes we have this idea that we want to be ready for everything, but some of our times of our life, we need to be ready, fire, aim. Go take action, go move, go do something, make the call, knock the door, learn something, master something, and see where it takes you. And people say, well, what if it's not the right path? Well, once you get on the path and you start moving down that path, you'll figure out whether it's the right path.
You'll figure it out.
Because you're good at making decisions, right? Because you'll make decisions, you can get off that path and go to a different path. But people never even get on the path. They don't even get to the trailhead.
Yep.
So, all right,
awesome.
brother. Thank you. And then make sure that you put your stuff in there in the chat box, and then I'll make sure Stephanie sends. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure then Stephanie also sends that out. And I know that you're so open to helping people, and yet it comes back for tenfold as you continue to help people, and who you are and just the energy that you bring to the work that you're doing. So thank you, man. I feel very, very blessed that you're part of the company, and thank you for your contribution and the difference that you're making, brother.
Yep. Thanks, George. Appreciate you.